All right, guys, just want to welcome back to the Gridiron Gurus podcast. The NFL draft concluded sometime last week, and we're still recapping everything that unfolded. Today, we're going to be looking at the NFC East team grades for all four programs that were involved from this division. Getting things started with the Dallas Cowboys. This is a team that had pretty clear needs, and that was on the defensive side of the ball. Everyone knows that their offense is incredibly stacked and very productive. But when you watch their games last year, this defense could not get a stop to save their life, and that was going to be the approach. And if they did anything other than that, it was going to be a F for me. They didn't do that, Nick. They did exactly what needed to be done, and it starts with getting Caleb Downs in the first round. And this was the dream scenario since day one that if Caleb could fall to them, that they would select him. A plus plus as we get what we gave that selection right. And obviously, it took a little bit of luck because this is like a top three player in the draft. But it's a safety, right? So it allowed him to fall outside the top 10, a player with great ball skills, downhill aggression versus the run. Lots of experience, of course, has been playing since he stepped foot on campus at Alabama. Has a lot of versatility. He can play nickel, he can line up in the box, he can be a center fielder, just an elite communicator. He does a little bit of everything very well, and Downs I just love what he can do when it comes to making sure everyone's in position, making great plays himself, always being around the football. Downs is going to be a significant upgrade for a secondary that needed talent, Nick. So I love the add of Caleb Downs. He's going to come in and he's going to play 10 years, hopefully all of them in Dallas. Right after this, Malachi Lawrence. This is a guy that is respectable and had a good offseason, especially in the combine. An athletic freak, tested off the charts, had a 4.5 240, shows really impressive bend. Nice length, some pretty good get off speed as well. I wasn't as happy with this one because I felt like Ruben Bain would have made a lot of sense for them, who was sitting right there. That's a guy who mocked the Dallas a lot. But at the end of the day, they checked a major need, and this is a high upside player. Pass rushers, they still need to add them since trading away Micah Parsons. I think this offseason they've done a good job of revamping that front seven, Nick, and they continue to do so. Lawrence wasn't the only pick for them. They also got Jay Sean Barham, a guy that has great short area quickness. He showcases the ability to use his speed when coming off the edge. He relies on power and strength as well. He played a lot of middle linebacker for Michigan, moved to edge this past season, so he's still learning the position. He's in the process of developing pass rush moves. I don't know how he doesn't end up being a quality player. I was a big fan of his last year. What do you make of these first three picks, Nick? All defense for Dallas, and they're having a monster off season.
The Cowboys, they had to go defense, right? There was no way to beat around the bush here. They went 5 out of 7 picks with defense, roughly just over two-thirds, about closer to 80% of their picks were on the defensive side of the football. And that's what this team needed to do. They had to add talent on the defensive side of the football. And I think that is a huge step in the right direction for them. They really attacked the defensive side, attacked the defensive positions, including adding 3 edge pieces. And that was a big deal for this team. And obviously, it starts with the headliner, Caleb Downs. This is Jerry Jones's guy. Jerry Jones wanted him really badly. Him and his son, who have been really working on running this team together. They both really wanted him. They wanted to bring him in, and this is a huge add for this team. Caleb Downs is one of the best pure prospects in the draft, if not the best pure prospect in the draft, depending on where you look. He was phenomenal at Alabama. He was phenomenal at Ohio State. This is a guy that's got incredible football IQ and one of the players that Nick Saban raved about, one of Nick Saban's top recruits, he said, when he was coaching. And he's a guy that just has incredible talent everywhere you look. And Caleb Downs here will be a phenomenal fit at Dallas. And you getting him where they did, it just makes too much sense taking him at 11th overall. This is a guy that's going to be a huge difference maker for a long time to come for the Cowboys. Now, I necessarily this overall this draft gets a B for me because I didn't love what they did with Malachi Lawrence. I think they could have done more at 23. I know they had to address the edge position, but Lawrence was ranked as the 54th overall player on ESPN's board. So overdrafting in that regard, and I understand for overdrafting to fill a need, but they could have got Ruben Bain, they could have got somebody else there. So there was some more work they could have done. When I heard this pick, I didn't love it here. I think Lawrence is solid, but he didn't really have a lot of production in terms of sacks or tackles for loss during the last couple of seasons, certainly last year at UCF, and I think he kind of lacks that pure pass rush motor, and he's a solid piece, right? Good against the run, can certainly be good and overpower some blockers. But I think he's just not exactly what this team needed. I think they would have liked to do a little bit more there with that pick, and they could have gone out and got a different edge that could have filled the hole. They kind of reached a little bit on Barham, but he's also pretty solid for what they need. I think he's really good. He's played off the ball as well at Michigan, so he's got some versatility. I think Barham could really be involved in this defense, and they added some good experience in a guy in Barham. So overall, those two out of those first 3 picks I really like. I'm big on those two. I think the Downs pick's phenomenal. The Lawrence one just kind of has me scratch my head a little bit here. I don't necessarily like that pick. I don't think it was a great use of capital at 23, but I'm interested to see how it develops for the Cowboys.
I think he'll be all right at best. Not the worst selection in the world, but again, I thought Bain would have made so much more sense. Looking at the next couple selections for Dallas, Drew Shelton. I labeled him as my worst pick just because I had to. That's kind of the nature of the key we have in the bottom right corner. Not because I hate the player, but offensive tackle wasn't exactly the biggest need. Shelton is a smooth mover and pass pro, good quickness of his feet to push edge rushers out wide. Significantly lacks play strength, though. That's something he's going to have to work on, and that could really allow him to elevate into a good player at 6'5", 313. They needed to add some linebackers, I felt like. Some more physicality, just continue to add talent at that position. I think they did make a trade during the draft. I'll have to double check on that to add a linebacker. I think they got I'm stunting on his name, Nick, but I think they traded for somebody. Devin Moore, though, a great value selection. I've been a big fan of his ever since he was at Florida. Battled health most of his career, though, was finally able to stay on the field last year. Good size, 6'3", 200. He can jam at the line of scrimmage. Has 4.5 speed to match guys downfield and has quite good feel in zone. Pretty solid ball skills as well. They picked up another defensive lineman of versatility. LT Overton from Alabama can play inside or out. He's considered a nice power rusher. And I did mock them often to draft a receiver in the 7th round. That's exactly what they did. Anthony Smith, a guy that's a good vertical threat. I think he's a good shot to make the roster because depth at that position is not exactly ideal for Dallas. I think it was D. Winters they traded for, Nick.
They did acquire D. Winters. Yeah, D. Winters was the player they picked up from San Francisco for a fifth-round draft pick, 152nd overall in this year's draft. So that was some good use of capital to acquire D. Winters, who's had a decent run at the 49ers. I think he's a good player overall. Started 17 games last year, considering they had so many injuries. So he got a lot of reps. There's some solid film on D. Winters. I don't think that was a bad use of draft capital by the Cowboys. And I think they did some solid moves here in the later rounds. I don't think the Drew Shelton pick was phenomenal, but I don't think it was super poor either. Love the frame on him at 6'5", 315. I think he can really work with that. It certainly will overreach on blocks a little bit, a little shaky in that regard. Certainly can get overrun by some of those more powerful defensive line pieces, and you'll certainly see those in the NFL. But I think Shelton's a guy you can work on. He's the 11th ranked overall tackle in the class. So again, I think it's good value in the 4th round and not terrible. I don't love it, don't hate it though. Devin Moore was a solid add. This is a corner that's really solid. He's got really good size at 6'3", 200 pounds. He can certainly jump routes with some solid speed, and I think his overall length is really good. And getting him in the 4th round where they did, he's ranked 120 on the board. They got him in the 4th round. I think that's a really solid, smart move there. LT Overton was a pretty big body at times for Alabama, and he didn't have a ton of sacks, but he was disruptive. He certainly, the film showed that he was a little more disruptive than the stats did. He was good against the run. He's quick for his size, certainly, right? I think he's got good hands as well, and he can really kind of push off those blockers and get involved. And Anthony Smith was not a bad grab in the 7th round for this Cowboys team. He was okay at North Carolina State. He was solid at ECU as well, and this is a guy that's got good speed, good possession, good length overall, and I think the hands are pretty solid on Smith as well. And taking a flyer on him in the 7th round isn't too bad. Ultimately for me, this Cowboys draft gets a B. I think it was pretty solid at the top. They added some good pieces. I question a little bit of some of the overdrafting with Lawrence and Shelton, but overall it gets a B. Got a B plus from Dalton. The Cowboys, they handled it pretty well down in Jerry's World. Not a bad draft for them in 2026.
Moving to our next team here, the New York Giants. I thought they had a phenomenal draft. They had a lot of capital, especially a couple days before the draft. They traded Dexter Lawrence away for a top 10 selection. Things worked out perfectly for him. Orville Reese, a guy people thought would potentially go number 2 overall, falls to them at number 5. He's being considered a hybrid player, so he's going to be highly useful in this 3-4. Harbaugh did say he's going to play middle linebacker, at least early on in his career. Ran a 4.46, has great speed to power. Shows size and strength as well to thrive as a run defender on the interior. So a lot of people think he's going to end up being one of the top defenders in this draft. And then the player I thought they probably should have took at number 5 right before draft night got started was Francis Mauigoa. They ended up getting him at 10. Blue chip prospect coming out of high school, lived up to the hype. Great anchor, elite size. He's got phenomenal strength. A mauler in the run game, pretty explosive mauler. I think he's going to be a Penny Sewell type who plays 10 years in the league, 6'5", 330. This guy's going to be tremendous. I think they're going to kick him the right guard, though. Has that versatility. I think he's going to thrive at either position, Nick. They got very lucky, I would say, with these guys being able to fall right into their lap. Kind of the Ravens type strategy, right, where we just take the player that nobody else wants to take. That's what the Giants did on night 1. They didn't overthink it at all. 2 highly impactful players for a team that's really been down to the dumps for a couple years now.
Yeah, I love what they did here. This is phenomenal. My Giants did a great job. I was a little disappointed they traded Dexter Lawrence. I did really like him a lot, but getting a top 10 pick and having 2 top 10 picks is phenomenal, right? You could really do a lot with that, and I wanted them to go with a tackle and defensive player, and that's exactly what they did. I think Reese is a really solid player, and I saw some people, hating on it online because people are saying like, oh, why are you adding another edge? This team has so many edge players. He's a hybrid, right? This is where I think he fits really well because he doesn't have to have that pressure as being a pure pass rusher. You can kind of move him around. You can play play him at linebacker. You can play him in some different positions here, and I think he's got a good position to develop where he doesn't have to be that number one alpha on the defensive line, doesn't have to be that number one guy getting after the quarterback that will relieve some of the early pressure on him in his career. ESPN ranked him as the number one player overall on their board. I think he's just incredibly fast, has high football IQ. He just checks all the boxes for the defensive player, and getting him at a 5 when he was, one ranked player on some people's boards, number 2, number 3, depending where you looked, is really solid overall. He's got incredible speed. I think he's going to be great for this defensive side of the football. And then Malgo, I love. This is a guy that's just a pure tackle who is going to be a phenomenal player that could play, 10 plus years, 10, 15 years in the NFL. I think the Penei Sewell comp is a phenomenal comp, and that's the one I kept going to throughout the draft process. And this is a kid that just knows the game really well, 6'5", 330 pounds. He's really light on his feet. He can quickly move around to pick up blocks. He's really strong, and the hands are phenomenal on him. He's got really good football IQ. He can really anchor and kind of hold on when he gets attacked by some of those higher speed defensive assets on the defensive line. I think he fits really well. You can play him at guard. I think that's kind of going to be the decision here. You can play him at tackle too if you want to make that happen, but I think right guard is probably where Malgo is going to play in East Rutherford. I think that makes a ton of sense. This is just great use of capital in my opinion here. They address two big needs, the defensive side of the football. They address the offensive line, which is a big need as well. Got a guy that's versatile, can play tackle or guard. Love what they did here. Two great top 10 picks for the Giants.
Now you move to what they did on day two. Colton Hood, a player that thought from most of us he would go in the first round. They ended up getting him early in the second. This is another need addressed. Hood's a guy that's really good in man coverage of his stickiness. Pretty impressive technique as well. Love the lateral movement. Shows really good patience as well. He's a good player in cover two zone. Showcases a quick trigger underneath. So I think Hood's going to come in and immediately play for them as well. They needed another receiver, right? Malachi Fields. This is one of my favorite players at his position this cycle. 6'4", 220, a big bodied receiver. He's not going to win with speed. He's not going to get downfield and win vertically. That's fine, right? You can find plenty of guys that can do that. A player that's this size, that's very smooth of his routes, getting in and out of his breaks is hard to find. He also does a great job of plucking the ball out of the air. Very good at high pointing it and coming down with tough catches. So I love Malachi Fields there. We went ahead and labeled Bobby Jamison Travis as the worst selection for the Giants. I don't think it's bad because they're just going to ask him to be a rotational D tackle, 6'3", 328 pounds. He's a former JUCO guy, though. Didn't really do much at Auburn. I mean, he was a very quiet guy for the most part because we watched plenty of football of them over the years, but he does have a lot of strength. He can win at the point of attack. He could potentially be an anchor and hold ground as a gap clogger against the run. So I think he can be respectable. But again, he was just very quiet in his career and didn't do a whole lot. J.C. Davis, I do love this addition here, falling to the sixth round, 6'4", 322, was a very good left tackle for Illinois. I think he could potentially come in and play guard for them as well. This is a guy that does have a good base, though. He's pretty efficient when it comes to climbing to the second level. Does need to improve his technique overall, but he was a respectable pass blocker as well. And then to cap things off, Jack Kelly, overall just a hard worker at linebacker, 240-pounder. Good movement for his size. Pretty impressive closing speed. I remember in that first game that BYU played against Texas Tech where their offense was getting clobbered, he was out there just making play after play for this defense. And he's just a throwback kind of football player for me, Nick. Hard nosed, hard worker. He's going to come in and be disciplined, and he'll have some type of role for this team, even if it's on special teams.
This was a solid draft. I think it's an A for a reason. The Giants did some solid work in the later rounds. Getting Colton Hood fills a massive need and kind of got him at decent value overall. He's a pretty good press corner, right? Good length, 5'11", 200, or just under 200 pounds, about 195. He's a good tackler as well, high football IQ in that regard, and really solid fundamentals. He was really clean tackler at Tennessee. He was ranked number 4 in the cornerback class, which was a pretty good cornerback class, so I think this is a good player to get. I like what Malachi Fields can do. At 6'4", 220 pounds, he's certainly a big-bodied receiver, and obviously he's not got that really over-the-top speed, but I think this is a good, reliable hand for Jackson Dart to throw to, a solid guy that's got good hands, really good. He's got really solid, good routes, and he's a little bit of an interesting player where he's got a dynamic route tree that is hard for defenses to read. He was pretty solid and developed it really well at Notre Dame. He was a good target for that team last year. So getting him, in the third round is pretty solid. I would have liked to see the Giants get maybe one of those high-end pass catchers early on, but overall I liked what they did in the first round, and they addressed the need eventually. They got a pass catcher. Next year, potentially the Giants could take a pass catcher early in the first round to kind of fill and add some talent to complement Malik Neighbors, who is still coming off that injury though, so that's something to be wary of as a Giants fan. Bobby James and Travis, I didn't really understand this pick a whole lot. Didn't make a lot of sense for me. He was ranked like 310 on a lot of people's boards. You took him in the sixth round, so it just didn't seem to like make a ton of sense. It's a position they didn't really need to fill, so I don't really love this pick necessarily. He's a big body, and he certainly can clog and be solid at controlling the run and be good in that kind of gap there, but wasn't super impressive at Auburn and was a JUCO player before that, so I don't really love this pick. I think it's definitely the worst pick for the Giants by a pretty comfortable margin. The two later picks, J.C. Davis was good value. This is a guy that's got some versatility. You can play him at guard, play him at tackle. Him and Malgoa both have some flexibility on offensive line, which I think is what the Giants desperately need, is some opportunity to find guys that can plug in and kind of be a flexible piece for that O-line, play in different roles. And Davis is a bigger guy who can really work well. Jack Kelly's a solid, hard-hitting linebacker. I think he's really got some good speed, some good movement, and getting him, where they did, not bad at all. This is a guy that's going to tackle. He could be a solid, special teams asset as well. He's pretty speedy in that regard. So I think taking a chance on a guy that had some good experiences at BYU, a good, clean football player, not a bad move at all.
Now we're going to go ahead and move to the Philadelphia Eagles, a team that also had a pretty good yet controversial draft for some of the selections they made, and it started with them leapfrogging the Steelers on night one when they were going to take Mekhi Lemon. Instead, he's going to be in Philly. One of my favorite players, of course, as a USC fan. This guy just has a knack for being a go-to playmaker. Has strong hands, elite focus, top-tier nuances in body control and locating the football. Pretty impressive yards after catch as well. Now, AJ Brown, there's rumblings that he's probably going to be moved on at some point this offseason. I think post June 1st, that's still the goal. And it looks like they're going to command a first round selection in next year's draft for that. So this makes a lot of sense. This is A plus. They found his replacement was going to be very good. They're going to get rid of a diva in Brown, and they're going to get some good capital for him in return. And then right after that, Nick, they got Eli Stowers in the second round, who I actually mocked in my final one for the Eagles. Stowers to them in the first round. So how could I not love this one either, right? 6'4", 235, great slot option, impressive catch radius and natural hands. Does an elite job at finding the soft spot in zone and quickly getting his head around to the quarterback. He is still earning the position as next quarterback. Blocking and overall play strength is definitely not going to be his strong suit, at least early on. But in terms of pass catching awareness and production, he'll bring that to the table. And then the next pick, Nick, they picked up another offensive player, a tackle, and Markel Bell. This is a guy that has a tremendous amount of size, 6'9", 350. I mean, what in the world is going on, right? It's just going to be hard to get around this guy. He can definitely be a strong run blocker as well. Obviously, when it comes to technique and getting burned by quickness on the inside, could definitely be something that's tough. But this offensive line has been one of the best for a long time. And I know their coach left, so maybe that's something to consider. But they should be able to develop this guy into a pretty respectable player up front. What do you make of the Eagles, Nick? Because this is a team's got a pretty complete roster. I feel like their defense had more needs than offense, but they're continuously building for the future under Howie Roseman. And last year, this offense was a big reason why they struggled so badly. And they're going to continue to focus on that to hopefully get Jalen Hurts back into elite form.
In my opinion, the Eagles had to go after the offense early in this draft because that offense was abysmal last year. If you watched this team, that's why they were just horrible last year and they flamed out so quickly because that offense just was absolutely abysmal. There's no other way to put it. Bad offense. They were not able to do anything. And here they addressed those by adding two pass catchers and adding a tackle that could really work well. They made the move. They grabbed Mekhi Lemon, who is one of my favorite prospects in this draft. He's super speedy. He's really solid across the board. And I think if you move out A.J. Brown, this only continues to make more sense for the Philadelphia Eagles. Get a first round pick for Brown. You can really make some work with that capital next year. Howie Roseman is an absolute incredible GM who continues to find diamonds in the rough, continues to make phenomenal drafts. So I trust him here. I think I like what he's doing here. It was clear that Lemon was a hot prospect and people wanted him. The Eagles jumped up and grabbed him, and it was a really solid move for him. His pro comp is a fellow guy that played at USC, Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think that's a pretty solid comp overall, and this is a guy that could be a huge player. Only dropped 3 passes in 3 seasons at USC, so he's really solid with his hands. 5'11", about 200 pounds. He's phenomenal. I think this is going to be a great player. I love this pick for them. I think the Stowers pick is great as well. This is a guy that is very interesting because he was a converted quarterback, converted to tight end. He's got some pretty solid vertical jump, got some pretty solid broad jump, and I think he's got tested really well overall at the combine. He was good at Vanderbilt for 2 years. He was a solid pass catcher. He was really key in that offense. He adds some versatility, and I think he can kind of develop and plug in. We saw Harold Fannin Jr. have a lot of success as a rookie tight end last year. I think Stowers can put up some similar type numbers and performance defense, and we mocked him in the first round. They got him in the second round. You really can't hate that value. Really smart moves there. Markel Bell is huge, 6'9", 350 pounds. This guy is an absolute monster there, and I think he's a really good left tackle. Played 20-plus games for Miami at that position, so it's hard to get around him. He's got some really incredible length as well. His arm length is pretty good. I think he's pretty good in run block, pretty good in pass block as well. And this is a team that, they draft on needs a lot. They fill what they needed to do here, and I think they took a guy that's got really good potential in the third round with Markel Bell. It wasn't necessarily the greatest pick in the world, but I think it's the guy that can develop and be solid for that offensive line. They need to add some pieces there. Can be really good, can be really versatile. I think he can really plug in a lot of different places on that O-line and make some reps. 3 picks, 3 offensive picks, really solid picks to start off for Howie Roseman and company as they add 3 difference makers that should make some impacts for this team.
Well, they're not done there, Nick. Two more offensive players come off the board for the Eagles, one of them being a quarterback, and we, again, mocked the Eagles drafting a quarterback at this exact pick. It wasn't Cole Payton, though, but this is a respectable player who's 6'3", 232, has nice size. He's a left-handed quarterback, pretty good short to intermediate passer. We've seen him play a couple of games throughout the years. He was pretty good in those appearances, but he was mainly a dual-threat guy, and a lot of people keep saying they're probably going to use him like a Taysom Hill type guy in the Wildcat, maybe put him at tight end out there as a pass catcher, multi-dimensional quarterback basically. So I think this is respectable. They'll find a way to get him involved, right? And I think Tanner McKee's still that QB2 at the moment, so he's gonna have to go out there and compete. Micah Morris, this guy used to eat lunch, Nick, at the table next to mine because we went to high school together. Very proud that he was able to work his way into this draft. 6'5", 334 out of Georgia, was a phenomenal pass blocker, great strength, strong hands as well. Needs to improve his technique and his balance and his contact overall when it comes to being able to establish movement in the run game. But this is a respectable player that's going to have an opportunity as well as this offensive line could use some better depth, right? And then they finally went defense. Cole Wisnowski from Texas Tech. I don't think he's all that athletic. He was also at North Dakota State with Cole Payton at one point, Nick, because we watched some tape on him when he was there. 6'4", 220. They're probably going to have to use him in the box, as more of a hybrid player because I'm not sure if he's going to have the athletic ability to be out there in coverage. But I think he shows good range, pretty respectable strength. I think he's a good football player when it comes to his angles and overall physicality. So a player that can definitely carve out a role in this league. And then they went to the defensive line for 2 selections. Keyshawn James Newby was a very productive player for New Mexico this past year. Pretty fluid mover, very light on his feet, and some nice quickness. And then they went and got a guy that's never played football, Nick. You are Bernard from Nigeria. 6'4", 306 pounds. He tested off the charts this offseason. He's a part of the International Pathway Program. And I went ahead and labeled it as the worst pick because, again, for one, he has not played football ever. So it's going to take a couple of years of coaching him up to see if he can even, fit in here. Back in 2018, they drafted Jordan Mailata, and he's one of the top left tackles in football. So this can definitely work, right? And we don't want to be quick to judge. But my problem is Xavier Harris was still on the board, one of the top D tackles in the SEC this past year. One of the top linebackers from A&M and Theron York was still available. That was something they could have addressed, but no, they decided to go and grab a guy that's not going to play for years that might not pan out at all, Nick, and it's just a little upsetting. But again, the testing numbers were ridiculous. A 4.6 40 at his size, a lot of upside there, and they've done it before. So we're going to trust the process here. I just feel like there's definitely better impact players available for the immediate moment.
And I'll wrap up my thoughts on the Eagles with talking about Bernard. I'll save my thoughts for the last portion of this segment because I think it is a very interesting case study. And I'll start with Cole Payton. I think the Eagles were pretty obvious they're going to draft a quarterback. Last year, they took Kyle McCord. He ended up on the Packers as a practice squad backup guy. Got some reps at Philadelphia, but then end up really making the roster here. And Peyton, I think this is a guy that they got a little more flexibility with. He's a true dual threat, really solid, crisp lefty, really polished overall. Pretty good setup. The release is really quick with him. You saw that a lot. If you watch North Dakota State, he got the ball out very quickly. The arm strength may not be elite, but I think he's really good in that short to intermediate passing game. He could be really solid with his legs as well. So he can certainly be a quarterback that can be used in some of those wildcat, more funky situations, kind of throw the defense off. So I don't necessarily hate this pick in the fourth round. Or fifth round, I beg your pardon, makes me like it even more. I think this is a guy that can be really solid. Micah Morris is a tackle that needs some polishing, but I think he's a player that can certainly develop. He's got some good size. I think he's got some really good strength. The hands are pretty good on him as well. He can move defenders. He's got to be a little more consistent. I think they need to coach him up, but if they get some good coaching in him, he can be a versatile guard at the right or left side. Wisnowski was pretty solid at North Dakota State. He was pretty solid at Texas Tech as well. A hybrid safety linebacker that's got some good versatility, could certainly be involved in the special teams as well. He's a good match against tight ends. I think he's really solid in that regard. I think this is a guy that's got some good tackling, some good fundamentals, who can play in well. James Newberry, same thing at edge. This is a guy that was pretty good. 9 sacks last year for New Mexico. I beg your pardon, leading that team. Pretty fluid mover, light on his feet, some good quickness overall, and really can be solid. The frame is not ideal on him, so I certainly understand why he fell to the 7th round, but he's a player that's worth taking a punt on. And then Mr. UNR Bernard, this is a very interesting piece, right? I think there's one GM I trust to draft a guy from the International Pathway Program that's never played football. It's Howie Roseman, because we've seen him do it before, obviously, with the tackle, Maletta, who has been phenomenal for this team, a key tackle on that offensive line. And taking a guy that's never played football is an inherent risk. And of course, people are going to say, like, oh, it's sort of a move by a PR move by the NFL to pump up their national numbers, pump up this, that, and the other. And I get that point of view, but this is a guy that's the testing numbers are just incredible. The raw numbers on him, the raw physicality for his size and athleticism at 6'4", 300 pounds to move the way he does, to move, to have the footwork, sort of the energy, the athleticism he has to run a 4.6 in the 40-yard dash and a 40-inch vertical, 11-foot broad jump is just incredible. So if you can find a way to polish him out, find a way to teach him the fundamentals of the game, it's going to be a long process, but this could certainly be a gold mine in making for the Eagles. Maybe they could have waited to try and sign him as an undrafted free agent. Maybe they could have done something else with this pick. I understand, why people are skeptical of it, but this is a guy that just has incredible athleticism for his size, and it's certainly stunning when you watch the very limited, obviously, tape. There's not a whole tape on him because he never played football. But when you watch the limited pre-draft content on him, it's really startling how he can be a massively impactful player if he learns the game of football right. Got to learn how to put a helmet on, obviously, and get out there and understand the fundamentals and the X's and O's of football. But a very intriguing pick in the 7th round. I'm curious to see how it goes out. He'll have a lot of eyes on him. We'll certainly see what's going on with him in the next couple of years. But if that works out, Howie Roseman would be a genius.
And I'm not saying this to be critical because I have no problem with the international pathway program. I think it's great the NFL keeps expanding to other countries and whatnot. But he was actually at the draft, Nick. He walked on stage after he was drafted. So it's almost like they knew he was going to be drafted, or they maybe told the team to go ahead and select him and we'll make up for it later, right? So I definitely think maybe some shady business going on. It's not the biggest deal in the world at the end of the day. I don't really care that much. Moving to the final team here, the Washington Commanders. This is a team that we expected to not really be all that flashy because they didn't have a lot of draft capital. They were able to get Sonny Styles, though, at number 7, a middle linebacker that is an athletic freak, great strength. As a run defender, he's really quick to trigger downhill, has great range. I love the motor as well. Started his career at safety. He was like 225 pounds. Like he was playing out of position at safety, and that definitely led to some inconsistent play for him and the Buckeyes defense. So from day one, Nick, we said this guy should be playing linebacker, and they moved him down there. Now he's up to 6'5", 244, and he's a first-round pick. So Sonny Styles is going to be great. I think they nailed it with this one. They really come in there and improve a defense. It's been shaky over the last couple of years. Antonio Williams in the third, another need of mine at wide receiver. The wide receiver group for this team is incredibly poor. Nobody ever seems to talk about it right now. Traylon Burks is their number 2. Williams is hopefully going to come in and be a perennial slot receiver for them. I love the short area burst, the twitch. Option routes are really where he shines. He has strong hands as well. He's always a playmaker, especially on third and maybe even fourth downs as well. I was always happy with him at Clemson as a leader there at pass catcher. So I think he's going to come in and make an impact for Daniels. And then on day 3, Joshua Joseph's adding another edge. They added 2. They paid a lot of money to some guys this offseason. Still need to build to the future, and they still need to have some depth. This is a guy that was very good at using his length at Tennessee. He has some respectable strength as well. I like his active hands. I think he continued to evolve as a player. But I think he has some high energy as well. So Joseph's pretty solid selection there. Hatron Allen, the Penn State running backs, fell way too long. I think it's because of the speed. These guys aren't exactly the fastest players. They were also seniors, so they have some extra tread on their body. But he's got nice patience. I love the vertical cut he provides. Has some nice acceleration to the hole. He's not the strongest of guys despite being bigger, but he definitely can power over some guys in that hole and be a nice between the tackles runner. So I think he'll be making this roster as a 6th-round selection. Matt Golban, Nick, when we did our final mock draft, we had the Commanders taking this guy because center's a big need for them because they just cut their starter just a couple weeks before the draft. A lot of experience under his belt, 305 pounds. Spent 4 seasons at Wake Forest, moved to Michigan State this past year. He's got good football IQ. I think he does a good job of picking up stunts and twists. Has a pretty solid anchor in base against bull rushers as well. And then to cap things off, for a team that doesn't have a lot of capital, why are we taking quarterbacks? Cal Commandus really impressed for Rutgers this past year, especially in the short to intermediate range. So I hope he has a fair opportunity in the NFL, Nick. But this is just dumb for a team that wasn't very good last year. I know health at quarterback wasn't good for them, and maybe that's one reason you could potentially make the argument for it. But come on, dude, why are we taking quarterbacks in the seventh round? The roster is not that good, and you probably could have just waited to select your favorite quarterback if it's not him or somebody else when it comes to the undrafted free agents. Not a fan of this at all.
This is definitely a weaker draft. They only had 6 picks. It was kind of hard to make magic with that low of capital, but they had needs in the secondary they just ignored and did not fill at all. I don't think they really did a whole lot they needed to do immediately. And like you said, they wasted one of those picks on a quarterback that probably they could have got as an undrafted free agent. I don't necessarily love. The Stoney Styles pick was, solid. Right, Styles is a really good player for a reason. He had a great career at Ohio State. Was really solid, really fast, really good tester at the combine. He's a good run defender, right? Quick trigger, will certainly fly into the backfield. Will make big plays. Good motor, plays consistently all over the field. Very versatile. I think he can plug into this defense and then get a lot out of him immediately. I would like to see him go high end receiver potentially in the first round, but I think this could be a solid pick. And they addressed receiver not long after in the third round of Antonio Williams, who is a player that could be really solid. This is a wide receiver room that needs help. Like you said, they are relying on Treylon Burks as their number 2 guy, which is just a scary sight to see if you're a Washington fan. Williams is a player that was pretty solid at Clemson. Everyone at Clemson had a bad year last year, but he was good in the slot, really solid burst. I think he's good off the line. He's got some solid routes as well, and he's got good balance overall. So I think getting him there in the third round could really work out well. Joshua Josephs is a good edge player, but again, I didn't really necessarily think that was a need for this team, and they could have done a little bit more in the 5th round. He's solid. He's got good speed. He really can push off those offensive linemen. He can get in the backfield and cause some problems as well. He's got some good hands, really solid hands in that regard. Keytron Allen was an interesting pick. This is a team that probably needed some help at running back. Allen fell. Him and Singleton both fell because they do have a lot of tread on the tires. Like you said, they played a ton at Penn State. I think they don't exactly profile well for the NFL, but he's a patient runner. This is a guy at Allen that he'll follow his blocks. He'll be solid. He'll make a burst when he has to. He was productive at the college level, so I think he could be a really good rotational back, solid backup. In the 6th round, it's not the worst pick in the world. The Goldman pick, I think, makes a ton of sense. He was really good at center for Michigan State. Was pretty solid at Wake Forest as well. He was good between the 2 schools. Got strong punch, pretty solid hand placement overall. I think he's a good, strong player, solid leverage, good anchor against some of those tougher run defenders. Pretty good at pass block, pretty good at run block, I think, for where they drafted him. They needed to get a center here. He's ranked 157th on the board. They got him in the late 6th round. Pretty solid use of capital, in my opinion, of limited capital. And I think Kaliakmanis is a great quarterback. Don't get me wrong. I thought he was really good at Rutgers last year. I liked watching him. But this is a team that only had 6 picks. They needed to add pieces in the secondary. They could have added a safety or a corner in the 7th round. And they're taking a quarterback. Just kind of a bit of a head scratcher. I understand that Daniels was banged up, and you made the comment earlier that maybe that's the rationale behind it, is that Daniels was banged up. Mariota ended up getting hurt. They were down to a 3rd string for late part of the season. They were kind of in quarterback hell. So maybe adding a guy that they think could be more consistent, more stable for their offense would be helpful if you're really questioning what Daniels and Mariota's health and what other quarterbacks' health in the future looks like for that team. I kind of get it, but at the same time, you could have maybe got him as an undrafted free agent. You could have got a different quarterback as an undrafted free agent. And when you just have such limited picks here, I feel like you have to go out and address some other needs early on that can kind of make a big play for your team. You had Sam Hartman on the roster still as well, so I don't really love necessarily taking a quarterback in the 7th round. I don't really love this draft overall. I thought the Commanders could have done more. I understand that it's hard to work with limited picks, but they just did not really wow me here. Seemed like just a weak draft across the board, and one of my least favorite ones in this draft class.
So here for this episode. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.